welcome back to the Hair Babes and Business podcast. And for the very first time, I'm so excited to announce that if you are watching this, welcome to the very first episode of the Hair Babes and Business podcast on YouTube. I have been wanting to do this for a really long time, and I am so excited that I'm finally bringing this to you guys because I know that there's a big need. I know not everyone wants to have the podcast option. I know a lot of people would prefer video. So I finally got it happening and got the YouTube up and running. So I hope that this caters to all the video girlies out there who prefer to watch the video instead. So for those of you who don't already know me, my name is Jess. I am the owner of Hair Babes and Business. I created Hair Babes and Business at the very end of 2023, entering into 2024. So my business is coming up for its first birthday. And when I first decided to create Hair Babes and Business, I really didn't know what direction Hair Babes and Business was going to go in. I just knew that there was a need to share the knowledge and the information that I had, because I think right now is a really, really tough time for our industry, and a lot of people are just facing a lot of different challenges and a lot of different issues. And for me, someone who's been in the industry for a really long time, who's gone through a lot of the different things that have happened throughout the years and seen the way the industry's changed and seen the way that everything is rapidly changing and going in such a different direction than it ever has before, I just know that I had a lot of information and advice that I really wanted to share to try and help business owners or people in their hairdressing career just thrive and overcome some of the issues that we're facing today. So that was why I really wanted to create Hair Babes and Business, and I really didn't know exactly where it was going to go. And I guess today, for the first time, having the YouTube channel up and running, but also for my longtime listeners, I really just wanted to tell you my story and tell you how I got to this point. And I also just wanted to give you some life updates because things have changed a lot since I've last done a life update. And I guess I just want to be really honest with you guys and tell you where I'm at and tell you where the business is at and tell you like what the future looks like. I've had a pretty rough couple of weeks, to be honest with you, and I'm going to talk about all that and share all of that with you. But I'm actually really excited. I think that I know this is so cliche, but I do believe that everything happens for a reason. And I think that everything that's happened in these last couple of months has led to a pivotal moment in my life, and that's where I'm at right now, and that's what I want to share with you. So today's podcast episode is going to be a little bit different to what you guys are used to. It's going to be less educational and more just kind of telling you my story and telling you how I got to this point and what drives me and what is my passion for all of this. I just hope that by giving you guys a bit more insight as to who I am as a person and as to how my business has always ran and like where I'm at now and where I'm going to the future is just going to make you guys feel like I'm a little bit more relatable and kind of understand a bit more where I'm coming from. And I think that maybe like knowing my backstory and knowing how I got to this point is going to help you guys realize why I'm able to give you the information that I am and what kind of gives me the right to sort of teach this knowledge, because I have been through it and I understand. So I guess that's where I wanted to start off today, and I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. Like I said, it is going to be a little bit different and we are going to be back into education next week, but I really just wanted to kind of give you my backstory and give you an update as to where I am now. So I'm going to take this right back. I'm going to tell you literally everything. I'm just going to lay it all out on the table and be totally raw and open and honest with you. So basically for me, I decided that I wanted to go through to the end of year 12, and I was really lost at that time. I really didn't know who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do as a career. I wasn't overly sure of myself. I really didn't know who I was, I suppose. I just felt kind of lost, to be honest. And I had been doing music my whole life. I really started to learn music when I was about 9 or 10 years old, was when my parents paid for my first paid piano lessons. And my grandma plays piano and my great grandma plays piano, and music was something that was really highly encouraged. So I started playing, and I am a person who has been very luckily gifted with being pitch perfect. So I can hear a song and I can play it without any music. And that really helped me with my music. I did managed to go quite far with it because it was something that came very naturally to me, and it was something that I was very lucky to have been blessed to have been gifted in that area. So it was something that I really, really enjoyed. And when I sort of got to year 10, my teachers were sort of saying, you've got to go and do some work experience. Like, what are you going to do with your life? And I really just had no idea what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be. But music was such a big part of my life that I was like, maybe this is something I want to pursue. So I remember I spoke to my music teacher at the time and I was like, is there any chance that I could come and do some work experience here? He owned a music school and it was a private music school. It was outside of school hours. And he was like, yep, absolutely. We'd love for you to come and do some work here. So I ended up doing that, and he gave me a office job after that. So I used to work there on a Wednesday and a Thursday night and a Saturday, literally just creating invoices for people, making sure that everyone had paid their tuition fees, doing any phone calls for people who'd missed out on their lessons and seeing if they wanted a catch-up lesson. And that was kind of where it all began. Sort of a year after that, so that was in year 10. So in year 11, he asked me if I would like to do some education to become a teacher. And that was something that I was so super passionate about, and it was something that I really, really wanted to learn. So in my school holidays, I would go and do these trainings and I would learn their methods and their way of teaching, and I ended up becoming a music teacher. So I would still work a Wednesday and Thursday night after school and a Saturday, and I would teach classes and teach people to play music and to sing. And I did that for 2 years. So I did that all through year 11 and all through year 12. And by the end of year 12, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I had completely lost my passion for it. And I think the problem was the music school was a little bit pretentious, and I say that in the best way possible because I loved working there and I loved the people there. I think a lot of the kids who were learning music there were learning music because their parents wanted them to learn an instrument, and so they weren't really interested. And it felt like every single week I was like banging my head against a wall because I was teaching these kids the same lesson over and over and over again because they weren't practicing. They had no interest in learning. They weren't practicing what I was teaching them in class. So they would go home, they wouldn't do anything, and then they would come to their next lesson and they wouldn't have learned anything. So we were doing the same lesson over and over and over again. And I just really started to lose my passion and my joy for it. And I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is not at all fun. This isn't giving me passion. This isn't like making me feel warm and fuzzy. It's actually just making me feel very frustrated. Now, the thing with music in Adelaide is that it is very, very hard to break into that scene because there's just, well, at the time, there was just such a limited amount of opportunities available. And if you wanted to break out of that scene, you really needed to move to Melbourne or Sydney. And I just wasn't willing to do that. I just wasn't willing to leave my life here. I didn't want to leave my family. And I was also smitten with my high school sweetheart. We started dating when I was 16 years old, and I did not want to leave him either. So I made the decision to scrap the music idea, and once again I just felt completely lost. I was like, I just don't know what to do or where to go from here. And my mum said to me, she was like, you have always loved hair. You've always loved, like, when your girlfriends come over, you braid their hair, you're always painting their nails, like you're really into that. You like, I used to back in the day sit down on like a Friday night after school. Was like my favorite thing ever. On a Friday night after school, I would like come home, we'd have our dinner, do all the nighttime things that you had to do. And then once everyone sort of broke off and did their own thing, I'd go into my bedroom, I'd close the door, and I'd sit on YouTube and I would YouTube tutorials on how to do your hair and how to do your makeup. And I'd spend the whole night learning a makeup technique or a hair technique. And then I'd take all these photos of it on my digital camera. And it was just like, that to me was the best fun. That was like living my best life, and I just loved doing that. Put my music on. I didn't drink at the time because I was only like 16 years old, but I'd have, a little soft drink and some little chocolate or some snacks or something, and I'd just sit there creating all these different makeup looks and all these different hair looks, and I loved it. It was something I was so passionate about. And so mum was sort of like, that's what you love, like why don't you try looking into that area of work? Like, is that something you'd be interested in? So I remember it was literally the end of year 12. I had gotten my exam results back. I had literally been accepted into the con to go and study music, and I just decided I'm not doing it. It's not what I want to do. I don't want to do this anymore. And I just took a huge risk and decided that I wanted to pursue hairdressing. And so I remember our hairdresser at the time, she was a lovely, lovely, lovely lady, and she had a little home salon, and it was just her and one other girl that worked there. And I went over to her and I was like, I feel like I'm really lost at the moment, because my whole life I thought that I was going to go into this music career, whatever that looked like. And I was like, and I realized that that's not at all what I want to do, and that's not at all what I want. And I think that maybe I want to go into the hairdressing career. And I was like, is there any chance that I could come do some work experience with you? And she was so lovely. She was like, look, come back after Christmas. We're really hectic. And she's like, but in the new year, my offsider, she's going to have a couple of weeks off. And she was like, come in then. She's like, I'm going to be a little bit quieter. I can show you a bit more. We can really like do this together, and you can come see if you like it or not. So in the January, I went back and I did a week of work experience with her, and I fell in love. I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is my passion. This is like, I love it. This is what I want to do. So we spent the week together. I had the best time. I had the best experience. And she was like, if I had the capacity to take you on, I would. She's like, I loved you. I think that you were very passionate. I could see that this is something you really, really want to do. And she's like, I just don't have the capacity to take on another person. And she was like, but when you go to get a job, please put me down as a reference. I will give you a glowing review. And I was like, okay, like this is amazing. This is a huge like opportunity. This is an open door. And I left feeling like really good and really positive. Fast forward about a month, and I remember this so clearly. It was my grandma's birthday. Her birthday is the 2nd of February. And I am and was very close with my grandparents. My grandma is still alive. Her and I are very, very close. And my granddad, I was very, very close with him, but unfortunately he passed away a couple of years ago. But I have the best relationship with my grandparents, and I've always been very, very close to them. So I remember we went to their house to celebrate her birthday. We were having lunch with them, and we had a cake and everything. And it was just my mum and I and my grandparents. And honestly, I remember this so clearly. I was 18 when this happened, and I'm 32 now, but I can remember this day like it was yesterday. I remember what I was wearing. I remember the way that day smelled. Like, it's so crazy. It's so clear in my mind. But I remember we'd had our lunch, we'd had some cake, and we were sitting in their lounge room, and my granddad was reading the newspaper, and he said to me, there's an ad in here. They're advertising for an apprentice. You should apply. And it was for somewhere that was very close to where I was living at the time. It was like 15 minutes down the road, and he was like, I think you should apply. So straight away I called up and I was like, hey, like I've just seen your ad in the newspaper for the spot for the apprenticeship. I was just wondering how I could go about applying for that. And she was like, come down right now and pop your resume in. And so we left my grandparents' house in a little bit of a hurry, but they were very supportive. They were like, no, you need to go do this. Like, go do this now. Went home, printed off my resume, took it down there. And it's so funny the way these things happen. But I remember the lady who owned the salon came out to me, and she was like firing questions at me. She was like, tell me what your strengths are, tell me what your weaknesses are, like all of this sort of stuff. And I had never had to apply for a job before, because I was kind of handed the job at the music school after doing some work experience there. So I just was not prepared at all. And I remember thinking, and I still remember it so clearly to this day, she was like, tell me your strengths. And I was like, my strengths are that I'm really good with people. And then she was like, tell me your weaknesses. And I was like, my weakness is that I'm sometimes shy. And I was just like, why did I say that? I completely contradicted myself. Like, anyway, I remember I got out to the car, I burst into tears. I told my mum that was terrible and I'm never ever going to hear from them again. But funnily enough, a couple of days later, I got a phone call from them and they said, we want you to come in. We want you to do a trial. The first trial I went to was a week trial, and it was with another girl. We were basically competing against each other. It was very intimidating. And at the end of that week, they were like, look, we really think that you did a good job. We think there's some potential here, and we'd really like you to come back and do another 3-day trial. And I was like, okay, no problems. So I went back and did another 3 days, and at the end of the 3 days, they were like, you've got the job. We're going to back pay you from like the 3 days before, and congratulations, you've got an apprenticeship here. And I just remember being so excited, and I just couldn't believe it. Like, I thought I'd blown it, and then all of a sudden I had the job there. And so I worked at that salon for 7 years after that. I did my full apprenticeship there and became a senior stylist there. And over that time, I just watched things change a lot. I watched it kind of go from being no social media to social media became very, very important. I think hairdressing changed a lot in that time too. It was like kind of, I don't want to say not important, but it was a lot less important to becoming this real art and needing to really define your technique and refine your skills and make sure that you are providing an incredible service. I watched the way that customer service completely changed. It was no longer acceptable to give someone a glass of water and a Marie Claire magazine. Like, now we needed to have access to social media and televisions, and people needed cocktails and coffees with Tim Tams from a proper coffee machine. And everything just really changed over that period of time. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it was a good thing, but I just remember seeing how rapidly everything was changing and how the industry was just growing so quickly and changing so quickly. And I guess over that time, things had changed dramatically in the salon as well. I watched team members come and go. I watched the new people coming on, how different things were and how different people were and how the way things just changed dramatically. And I think I sort of started to realize that I didn't really fit into that space anymore. I wasn't going in the same direction as the salon, and I don't have any hate towards that salon. I think that she is an incredible businesswoman and the business space that she's created is unbelievable. But I just knew that I wasn't really fitting into the way it was going, and that was totally okay. In the meantime, my high school sweetheart that I didn't want to move away from for the music industry, we got married. And we had moved out to a country town that was like over an hour away from where I was working, but I didn't care. I was still traveling back and forth. I loved that salon and I wanted to be a part of it. So I did that hour drive every single day to and from. And it was a lot. It was hard work, but I wanted to because I loved it. I really loved that salon and the team and I wanted to be a part of it. But I think like towards the end, as I started to see like things were changing so much and the drive was getting a lot. And then like the final straw was that I was developing an allergy to the color we were using there. And it started on my hands. I had really, really bad dermatitis and it sort of started spreading up my arms and it was on my shoulders. And then a couple of times I had color and my scalp was on fire and I ended up getting really bad psoriasis and I was getting big like welts and blisters in my hair every time I would have a color. And I remember the last night I had a color there, we'd colored my hair and I come home and my head was so hot and so sore and I got this rash that had come down all down here. And I felt like my throat was going to close over. It was so hot and itchy and tight and I felt like I couldn't breathe properly and it was just getting worse and worse. And so I ended up going to the doctor and speaking about it and the doctor was like, you can't use that color anymore. Like you are going to end up in a really bad way. And the way these allergies to hair color works is it kind of just slowly builds up over time. And one day you just have a reaction so bad, you just cannot do it anymore. And it was earth shattering because I was like, I love this job. I love this career. I've worked really hard to get to where I've gotten. And now it's basically being taken away from me. So I was like, I don't know what to do. And I ended up speaking to my boss and she was absolutely incredible. And she was like, you know, I'm sad to see you go, but you've got to do what's right for you. And it's been a pleasure having you here. And she was wonderful. But I was like, what do I do now? Like, I just don't even know what to do. So I researched it and I ended up coming across a color brand that catered for people who had sensitivities to color. And I ended up getting a bunch of trial packs and I tried it all. And the very first thing I did, I remember I was sitting at the table with my mum and my mum just freaked out. I mixed up some bleach with some 20 volt and slapped it straight on my arm. And I was like, well, I need to know. I need to know what's going to happen. So I left it on there for 20 minutes. I took it off. And after 48 hours, I'd still had no reaction. And I was like, I think I can make this work. So I decided that in my little country town with a population of 300 people, that I was going to set up my first home salon. So my ex-husband and I had a house on the main street and at the back of the house, there was this room that was kind of attached, but not really attached. And it had its own little toilet area and it was completely separate from the rest of the house. So we decided to set up a salon there, and I changed to this new line of color that I'd never worked with before. I had no idea what I was doing. It was a different numbering system. It was a huge risk, and I just decided to take it and decided to do it. And so I remember I was getting my mum in and my grandma in, and I was practicing the colors on them and seeing if I could make it work. And I fell in love with it. The company was incredible and the color brand was amazing. And it was different. It took me a while to learn all the new things, but I got there and I absolutely loved it. And so I opened this business up. And I remember, and I don't know if you guys follow the Instagram, you would have seen the little video I popped up about this. I remember I was saying to my friends one night, we had friends come over for dinner, and I was saying to them, I've decided that I'm going to open up a salon here. And one of my friends was like, you are going to open a salon here with a population of 300 people? That's never going to work out. And I was like, oh, okay. But people were not very supportive, and I can see that there would have been some fear in the risk there, absolutely, because it was a huge risk. But at the same time, I was like, well, what else am I going to do? Like, I've got to give this a go. I've got to try it. Now, going into that business, I had no business knowledge. I had no business background. I had no idea what I was doing. I was making it up as I went along 100%. And I remember the first month, I think I had 3 haircuts booked in for the entire month. And at that point in time, I was charging $40 a haircut. So I made $120 in my first month. And I was like, this is terrifying. I have no idea how I'm going to make this work. But then 2 years later, I was so busy that I could not fit another client in if I possibly tried, and I ended up hiring my first staff member. And I just wanted to tell you guys that because I think it's so important to realize that, like, you don't necessarily have to have a business background to be able to be successful. And it is really hard in this industry because there is really no course to learn how to be a business person, especially in a hair salon. And hair salons just run so differently to so many different kinds of businesses. So it really is this thing that you are just learning on the job and learning as you go. And I just wanted to let you know that if you're in that stage where you're like thinking about starting a salon, or you've just started a salon and you feel like very like trying to just keep your head above water, that is totally normal, and you will be okay. You will make it. As long as you've got that passion and that drive, you will be able to do the things that you're trying to do. But also, I totally relate to the fear because it's terrifying. But it does work out. And I think the thing is just like learning to be resilient. I did so much marketing that I think really, really helped. And so many of the things that I did was like just, you know, not being afraid to put different things up on social media and attract a different audience. Not being afraid to get involved with like local footy clubs and doing a raffle to win a voucher. Because, okay, only one person wins that voucher, but then every single person who's entered that raffle has seen your business is there. And it's that exposure that really, really helps. And just little things. I put a poster up about my business in the local community board. And I asked the local community board if we could do, we didn't have letterboxes because it was very rural, but post office boxes, and just asking, can I put some pamphlets in the post office boxes? And just little things like that, like not being afraid to put yourself out there to get exposure. It does feel very uncomfortable at the time, but it works. And just getting yourself out there really, really works. So don't be afraid to do that. But yeah, so over this time, I built this really successful, thriving business, and people were traveling over an hour to see me. And it was because I lived in an area where people were very health conscious, and they knew the products that I was using were less chemical, less toxic, and they wanted to be a part of that, and they wanted to have that beautiful, low tox experience and feel good about having their hair done. And, you know, just as that was a part of my niche, it was really cool to be able to say, like, you can come to my salon, we have chill music playing, we serve herbal teas, you're not going to get that strong hairdressing smell, like the hair color doesn't smell. And to be able to say that from a perspective of, I found out that I had an allergy to color and now I've swapped over to this low tox color that doesn't give you those horrible reactions, was a really powerful thing to be able to do. And I think that really helped my business to grow too. And I think that's where it's really important when you are starting your business to figure out your niche, figure out your market, and figure out your point of difference and really play up to those things, because that's just going to help you be so much more successful as well. So fast forward a little bit, I've hired this new staff member, and then COVID happens. And COVID was devastating. And I know that anyone who was in business in that point of time knows exactly what I mean. We weren't able to trade for a really long time. And it was this constant fear of being like, oh, I've just heard that like a case has broke out. So how many more days am I going to get before they put us in a lockdown again? And how am I going to fit everyone in? And then once I have fit everyone in, like how long am I going to be not working for? So how long do I have to be able to budget for, because I don't know how long the lockdown's going to be for? And I have to say, being in Adelaide, we were very lucky and we did not have it anywhere near as harshly as many of the other states in Australia did. But we still felt it. We still felt the brunt of that. And it was a really challenging time. And I think that's where this like entrepreneurial mindset started to really kick in for me, because I was like, I'm not going to spend this time that I'm not allowed to work stressing about the business and learning how to make sourdough and not really doing anything that's going to productively help my business. Don't get me wrong, I did try to make sourdough. I wasn't very good at it, but I tried, and I did reorganize my pantry. But I spent a decent amount of time each day still working on the business. And what I did was I decided to make tutorial videos of like how to style your hair for date night. Not that anyone could go on date night, but it was finally a time where everyone was able to sit down and learn, so that we knew that when we got out of this, they were going to know these new skills of how to like curl your hair, how to up style your hair, or whatever it may be. And then in the end, I kind of just started to get a little bit funny with it. I was like, 6 different ways to style a beanie because you can't show that you've got regrowth, or 6 different ways to use a headband to hide your regrowth, or 10 different ways to style a hat. And it was silly stuff, but it worked and it got people watching. And over that period, when we reopened, when we were allowed to reopen our doors again, we had such a huge influx of new customers because people had watched these silly little videos that I'd been making and they wanted to get involved. They wanted to be a part of that salon. They wanted to be a part of the fun. And I think that was just a really powerful lesson for me, because I was like, I learned that even when things are really, really hard, you can still find a way to make something good happen out of it. And that's exactly what happened. My business really grew and started thriving from there. So sort of come out the other side of COVID, and then my business is booming. My business is the best it's ever been. My business is thriving and doing so well, but my personal life starts to completely fall apart. And it's just so interesting how that happened, but that's just what happened. I was having the best time of my life with my business. I'd never been so successful. I'd never done so well. And my personal life was just absolutely falling to pieces. Now, my personal life wasn't failing because of my business. It was completely separate issues. I just want to make that very clear, because I know sometimes when the business starts doing well and you kind of get into this like hustle and grind kind of culture, it can have effects on relationships and things like that, but it wasn't that. They were 2 very completely separate issues. So basically, my granddad became very, very sick and he was in the hospital for, I think it was 3 months total, and then he passed away in the hospital. But I was working these massive crazy days and then driving an hour to the hospital and spending as much time as I physically could with him, and then driving home and then doing another crazy long day. And I just did that for months on end because it was so important for me to spend that time with him, and I don't regret that for a second. I'm so grateful that I had that time with him, but it was a really hard time. It was exhausting, and I think the emotional exhaustion on top of the physical exhaustion is like a whole nother level of exhaustion. But also, my high school sweetheart and I, who were married and had been together for 15 years, our relationship was failing. And it was really difficult because we were just growing apart. We wanted different things in life. We had such different opinions on things than we did when we were teenagers. We were both growing into different people. We wanted different things. And I don't want to talk too much about this because I still care about him and I don't wish him any ill and I don't wish him any bad. But our relationship had become very toxic and we just couldn't be the people we needed to be for each other anymore. And I remember my friend was getting married in Queensland and I was one of the bridesmaids and I had to go to this wedding. And my ex-husband also had a business and he didn't want to travel because he was like, if something happens and we come back and we have to be in quarantine for 2 weeks, it's a big strain financially to have to not have both businesses running. And so he was very uncomfortable with coming over. And I was upset about it, but at the same time, I kind of understood where he was coming from, so I didn't really argue too much. But I flew over, we had the Hens and Bucks show. So my friend is actually I'm friends with both of them, obviously, but the groom has been one of my best friends since I was a little kid. So I was a bridesmaid, but I was technically in the bridal party for the groom, if that makes sense. So I was part of the Hens and the Bucks show. And we'd had all that and we'd had heaps of fun. And then, you know, we were going and getting our nails done and getting the dresses dry cleaned and all that sort of stuff. And they started saying that there was cases in Brisbane. And that's where we were. We were in Brisbane. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And at this point, there was guests flying home because they were like, we can't afford to get stuck. And it was just such a crazy time. That was such a crazy time of our lives to have to go through. But yeah, a lot of guests were flying home. People were trying to make the decision whether do we stay, do we go? Like, it was just really hard to know what was the right thing to do. And 2 days before the wedding, I got a phone call from my mum saying, Granddad's not going to make it. And it's up to you. Like, do you fly home? You probably won't even get here in time. Do you stay? Like, what do you do? And in my head, I just didn't know what to do. And I ended up speaking to a nurse and she was like, you're not going to get back here in time. He's not going to make it. It was late at night that I found out. And she was like, he will probably not be here in the morning. And if he is, he's going to die early hours of the morning. And I was like, I just don't know what to do. And I ended up deciding to stay. And to be honest, I'm glad that I did because he did pass away the next morning and it would have been before I got home. He would have passed away while I was on the flight. And I'm glad that I made the decision to stay because there was nothing I could have done anyway. So yeah, and then 2 days later was the wedding. So I had called my ex-husband and I was like, I really need you here. Like, I am not coping. I'm really struggling with everything that's going on. Like, I know that this isn't a great situation, but I think it's one that we need to take the risk for. I think you need to be here. I think we need to just deal with the consequences later because I just need you here. I need my person here, to be honest. And he was stressing about money and stressing about all these things, which I understand, but also I really needed him there. And so my parents ended up paying for some flights for him. They were like, we want you to be with her because we don't want her to be alone right now. So we're going to pay for some flights for you to go over and be with her. And he never got on the plane. And I think that was the moment I kind of realized, like, this relationship is done. Like, I am basically doing it on my own anyway. But I think that was the moment that I was kind of like, okay, like, I see where this is and it is what it is. But obviously, you know, I came home and we were dealing with the loss of my granddad and we had the funeral and everything. I did stay for the wedding, by the way, and we had a really lovely night, but I flew home first thing the next morning. And yeah, then we kind of went back to like packing up my grandparents' house because my grandma didn't want to live there on her own, which completely understandable. And so we went through all of that and there was a lot going on. And so that was in October. And then come Christmas, it was a very, very busy Christmas and I was glad to be distracted because there was a lot going on. And then the person who I had employed at the time, who was working with me, who was a friend, and I thought that we'd had a very good relationship, there was starting to be some cracks and I could see that things were starting to get a bit tricky. But right before Christmas, they ended up leaving as well. And I'm going to do a whole episode about that later on because I know that it's important to talk about staff and issues with staff. And that's something I do want to talk to you guys about because I know how hard it is to be stung by a staff member. And I'm going to go into that more later on. I don't want to go into that too much now because I'm going to do a whole episode on that very soon. But yeah, so they left a week before Christmas. So Christmas was just chaos. I had another girl who was like a tea and tidy girl working with me at the time, and her and I just smashed it out and managed to get it all done, but it was exhausting. It was a lot. And then we had Christmas. It was the first Christmas without my granddad, and it was just a very weird time. And my ex-husband and I were just going through it. Like, we weren't happy. Christmas was horrible. New Year's was horrible. Like, it was just a horrible, horrible time. And I had told myself on New Year's Day that I was pretty well done. Like, if this couldn't be fixed, I was like ready to walk away. And then a couple of days later, my ex-husband's father had a heart attack. It was just one thing on top of another. He is fine. He's doing very well. He's very healthy. But I think we kind of put our problems aside again for a little bit longer because we didn't have the capacity to deal with that on top of everything else that we were dealing with. So about a month later, once his dad was all recovered and healthy and doing a lot better, we sat down one day and had the conversation that, you know, where are we going in this relationship? And he told me that he wasn't in love with me anymore. And so my earth just came shattering down. And then a couple of days later, so I'm still like going through this process of, you know, the fact that my marriage is just broken down. My future that I planned for 15 years was gone. And I get a letter in the mail from the person that was working with me saying that I was being sued for unfair dismissal. And it was just like, you know, when you hit rock bottom and you're just like, how much more can go wrong? But you almost don't want to ask that because you don't want to like tempt fate even more. That's where I was at. And I just felt completely broken as a person. I was just like, my whole world is falling apart right now. And I had a lot of big decisions to make. And so I knew that it didn't make sense for me to live in that country town anymore. I didn't really have many friends there. My family was all an hour away. My ex-husband had his job there. He had a lot of friends there. The only thing that I had there was my business. And I made the decision to leave. I decided that he could stay at the house. He ended up buying me out, and that I needed to go and start fresh and start all over again. So I moved back down south to where all my family and everything is. I walked away from my house. I walked away from my business. My marriage was over. I now had a court case and I lost my dog. Like, he had to stay with my ex because where I moved to, I didn't have the capacity to take him with me. It wasn't fair. So I just felt like I'd lost everything. I felt like my whole life and everything that I thought my future was going to look like had just completely crumbled around me. And I hit an all-time low. I was so depressed and so sad. And so I decided to take 6 months to just work on myself. And I did a lot of counseling. I did a lot of self-work, a lot of personal development. I really just decided that I needed to fix myself first because I had a lot of things that I was carrying with me that I needed to fix and overcome so that I could step forward as the best version of myself. So I turned 30 that May, and I just thought, I'm stepping into this new chapter of my life and I need to make sure that I am the best version of myself that I can be. So a couple of months later, I opened my very first commercial space. I started completely afresh. I restructured my business model. I restructured the way that I did business. I restructured the way that I did the finance, the budget, and all of those sorts of things. And I really did build that business from the ground up. And I went into it as a different person, and I was stronger. I was a lot more confident. I had a lot more skills. I had a lot more understanding of not only who I was as a person, but also what I wanted my business structure to look like. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I learned a lot from previous experiences with staff and the things that had happened, and I just had like a new lease on life and a new lease of who I was as a person and a new lease of who I was as a businesswoman. And like I said, I think it was honestly the most successful I've ever been in my life. I had this amazing business that was thriving. I ended up closing my books because I couldn't fit any more people in if I tried. it wasn't a huge commercial space, so I couldn't have too many staff in there, but everything was going really well. Everything was thriving. Everyone was fully booked. And I had that business for 2.5 years and everything was going very well and very successfully. In that time, I met I'd known for a long time, but I got engaged to my now fiance and we're getting married next year. And this relationship is amazing and everything that I could ever have hoped and asked for. And things have turned around and things have gotten better. And the reason I share this with you is because I want to tell you that nothing is final, and even if it feels like you've hit rock bottom and you don't know how you're going to pick yourself up and dust yourself off, you can do it. And I think that's important to talk about because I remember going into the next business being like, I don't know if I have the energy to do this again. I don't know if I have like the strength or the energy to go through this process again. But I did, and it paid off and it was so worth it. And obviously that was in the middle of the financial crisis as well. And again, I don't want to say that it's easy and that you can easily overcome this financial crisis, because it's not like that at all, but I'm just showing you that it can be done. And it does take hard work and a lot of effort and a lot of energy, but it can be done. And I just want to show you that I'm living proof of that. So everything was going very great and very smoothly and very wonderfully. And then come July of this year, I had an accident. I was taking the clean capes and towels out to the car to go to work, and I tripped over in the driveway and I broke my ankle and I broke my foot. And that happened, quite a few months ago now, but I have had a journey with that. And I guess I haven't been 100% open with this with you guys yet because I just didn't know where I was at with it all and what the next steps were. But I have made a decision now and I want to share that with you because this is what the future looks like now. And this is what the future of Hair Babes and Business looks like. So I want to tell you about this because it's a huge change, it's a huge step, and it's exciting and terrifying and it's all the things. But I want you guys to be a part of this journey and I want to include you guys in what's happening. So that's why I have brought all of this story up to your attention so that I can tell you about this next step. So basically, I've been going in and out of like rehab and physio and trying to get better with my foot. But after a lot of advice, a lot of medical advice and a lot of work trying to get it better, my doctors have advised me to not go back to hairdressing for at least 12 months because I have a lot of issues with my foot and it gets very inflamed and it's very painful, and this healing process is a long process. So they have advised me that I need to do a job that requires me to be on my feet less. Now, am I stepping away from hairdressing? Absolutely not. It's in my blood, it's in my veins. I can't not do this. But the capacity of what I'm going to be doing this is going to look very different. So in the last couple of weeks, I've had to make the decision to step away from my business and do this hairdressing career in a different capacity. And that has been something really difficult to come to terms with. And I wasn't sure when I was going to talk about this, but this is why I want to make this video or this podcast episode, to just be completely honest with you and keep you updated with what's happening. Am I ever going to go back into business again? I'm not really sure. I'm keeping that door open. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But for now, I just need to have a little step back and focus on getting better and focus on some different things. Now, I am 100% still going to be doing hair. Will I be doing 12-hour days? Absolutely not. But I may be able to do a client here and there. And this has actually opened up a new door for me because I have a different space now. I have a different capacity and it's opened up a door for a lot more education. And I think this is something that I want to talk about because since the start of the year when I opened Hair Babes and Business, I didn't really know what that was going to look like and where it was going to go. But since I've had the time off with my foot, I have just made some really exciting things happen, having the time to be able to do that. And, you know, I've brought out my first course for you guys this year, the Consultation Queen course, which has had huge success. And the feedback that I've gotten back from that has been incredible. And it makes me want to do more. It makes me want to teach you guys more, because if I'm able to share my knowledge with you and help you, then that is unbelievable. I've also had so many amazing opportunities with the podcast. I have recorded so many interviews that I cannot wait to share with you guys. It has opened so many doors of meeting new people, and just this last week I've had 2 interviews that were absolutely incredible that I cannot wait to share with you. One was from a lady from the Gold Coast who's going to talk to you about the financial and budgeting side of things. And one is a business owner, a salon owner from Plymouth in the UK. And if you had told me at the start of the year that I was going to be doing a podcast episode with someone from Queensland, I wouldn't have believed you. If you told me I was going to be doing a podcast episode with someone from the UK, that someone from the UK had listened to my podcast and asked me if I want to collaborate, I would have laughed in your face. But I think having the time to be able to focus on this business has opened up so many more opportunities, and it's exciting. And I feel like the information I'm going to share with you guys is just amazing. So, stepping back from the business a little bit, it's giving me time to focus on this one. And it's giving me time to give you more information, give you more education, give you more of the stuff that I really, really wanted to do. And so that's what I'm going to do. I've decided to focus on this a little bit more. Now, I still have my business when it comes to my wedding styling. I can manage to do 1 day a week or 2 days a week that are half days. And so I will still have my wedding styling business, and I am still going to be doing hair, but it's just going to be at a different capacity. And the way that I'm going to be doing it now, it does create a lot more room for education. So it means that I can also show you some technical stuff, some color stuff, some styling stuff, which I'm really excited to do. And I think that that's a really exciting element that I haven't been able to do before that I can now bring into this, which is really exciting. And so, yeah, I guess that's where I'm kind of at. It's been hard because I feel like I've had a really big loss in deciding to step away from my hair salon business, but I'm so excited about this next step in my journey. And it does feel really organic and natural, and like natural progression to kind of be stepping away a little bit and leaning more into this next step in my career. And so I think that's really what I wanted to tell you guys. Like, that is my story. That's what's led me to this point. And now it's exciting that I can use all of that knowledge and all of that experience from my past to dive into this next step and teach you more about business and this career and this industry. And now I can just dive deeper into this and make sure that I'm providing more for you guys. So I'm really excited about the next steps. As you can see, as a first little introduction, we now have a YouTube, and I'm going to be sharing videos with you, not just podcast episodes, but also videos to do with things in the salon and just different things that I want to share with you guys. I've got some episodes coming for you this week that I think are really exciting about, like Christmas things for the salon. And I just really hope that this new content and more content is going to be so helpful for you guys. And I do have some more education coming, which I'm really excited about too. And in the new year, there's even some whispers of some live seminars and meet and greets, which is so exciting. And I can't wait to share that with you as well. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. If you got to this point, I've yapped on for a long time. So if you've gotten to this point, thank you so much for listening and listening to my story, listening to what I have to share with you. And for those of you that have been listening and supporting since the very beginning, I cannot thank you enough for your support. I'm so grateful to have built this community, and I can't wait to see how it grows from here. And I just want to thank you so much for your support, because this year has been a big year of life changes for me. And I just think it's amazing. Like I said, I keep having these pinch me moments where I'm like, if you had told me that this little idea that I had to try and share advice was going to result in the things that it's been resulting in the last few months, I would never have believed you. And it's so reassuring to me that this is helping and that it is working and that you guys are getting so much out of it, that it is able to continue to keep growing and we're able to turn it into this really exciting opportunity and experience. So thank you so much for listening today. Thank you for your support. It means the absolute world to me. I will link where you can find me on socials in the Spotify and the YouTube, because now we have a YouTube channel as well, but you can also find me on Instagram and TikTok. I would love for you to come and join me on any of the platforms and be a part of the community. As a community member, you're so welcome to message me and ask me any questions you have, anything you're struggling with, anything you want advice on, and I'd be so happy to create some content sharing advice for you. So please take advantage of that. I'm here for you. I want to share my knowledge with you. I want to see every woman out there in this career and in this industry thriving, and I want to see your businesses growing and expanding and thriving as well. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening in. If you did enjoy today's episode, whether you be on the Spotify, I'd love for you to give it a good review and the Spotify channel a follow. Or if you're here on YouTube, I'd love for you to give the video a like and to subscribe to my channel, because that helps my business grow even better. And then I can keep doing more of this stuff that I love. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Like I said, I know it was a bit different, and next week I promise you we're jumping back into some more educational content. But I just wanted to kind of give you my backstory and how we got to this point and what's next. Well, guys, I hope you have a wonderful Monday or whatever day that it is that you're listening or watching this. And I can't wait to share more with you next week. Thanks, guys. Mwah.